Welcome to Inspired Living with Mark and Kim. Every Wednesday, Mark and Kim, along with their special guests, will explore thought-provoking topics and ideas that promote creativity, self-help, healing, happiness, and well-being to inspire you on your spiritual journey. Each week, Mark and Kim will discuss different paths to achieving a more spiritual, balanced, happy, and healthy lifestyle. Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience, and all things spiritual. Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. Mark and Kim are tested, certified, and professional spiritual mediums, metaphysical teachers, healers, and spiritual advisors with their own individual spiritual practices in Seattle, Washington, and Los Angeles, California. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
One planet, 7.3 billion people, but only one you. You are the inspired and the inspiration, and this is Inspired Living with Mark and Kim on OMTimes Radio, the voice of consciousness. I am your co-host, Mark Lanehart, the intuitive prospector. And if you're just starting your day with us or just winding down into the evening, no matter where you're at in the world, we just want to thank you for being an inspired listener and tuning into the show today. We're going to have a fabulous guest coming on here very shortly. But before that, I want to introduce my co-host, the other half of the dynamic duo, Kim Thalken, founder of Love First in Encino, California. Good afternoon, my friend.
Good afternoon, Mark, and good afternoon, inspired listeners, wherever you may be today. Thank you for joining us. We're so excited about our show today and so excited to have you back, Mark.
Well, thank you so much. It's good to be back. I did miss last week and it was a fantastic show with Renee and a lot of interesting topics on the chakra system.
Yes, and relationships. Who doesn't want to have the best relationships they possibly can? So there's a lot of good and helpful information on how to do just that.
And Kim, I want to say congratulations. I think this is your 2-year anniversary for being the founder of Love First. Is that correct?
Oh, wow, Mark. Thank you. That was unexpected. Yes, it is.
Well, sometimes you have to do some improv on the radio, but congratulations.
There you go.
I know this is a journey that you started 2 years ago and really took, we talk about the 3 C's in life of choice, chance, and changes, and you made a choice, you took a chance, and you made a change, and I just want to say congratulations.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Mark. I mean, I can't tell you how happy I am with some of the decisions that I made in my life to make the changes that are needed to live purposefully. And we're going to be talking a lot about that actually today with our guest.
Yeah, it's going to be all about our words and our thoughts and how important they are. And I just want to let our inspired listeners know as well, if you do miss the live broadcast today, you can catch us over on-demand radio on OMTimes Radio, and we're also streamed on Podbean, SoundCloud, and now YouTube. So OMTimes has really grown with all of the different channels of getting our radio show out there. And again, if you are new to the show, welcome. And if you're coming back and tuning in every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, thank you so much for being one of our inspired listeners. And real quick, I want to give a shout out. We like to give a shout out usually every week if we can. And this week, Kim and I were talking, and I thought it would be fitting to talk about and give a very big shout out to our firefighters across the nation, the men and women that are out there battling these epic, historic wildfires, especially here in Washington State. We now have the largest wildfire in the history of Washington State, and these folks are putting their lives on the line every day to put these fires out and sacrificing a lot so that the rest of us can be safe. So I just wanted to say thank you to all the firefighters across the nation, and especially those in Washington State. And we even, unfortunately lost 3 firefighters due to these wildfires. So I just want to say thank you for your service as our shout out this week. And I also want to just make a special mention on the passing of our friend Colin Fry, a spiritual medium from the UK, who touched and changed thousands of lives with the work that he had done, and I just wanted to thank him for his service in working for Spirit. And, 53, he passed at the age of 53 from lung cancer, way too young, and just wanted to say, enjoy Summerland, my friend. So 2 shout-outs this week. And Kim, we're going to talk about words, and our special guest this week is very well known for what she does, and it ties in very well to our August positive affirmation. I can't believe it's going to be, this is the last month for this affirmation, and we're going to start new in September with a new affirmation. But for our listeners today, the August positive affirmation is, I am a powerful, loving, and creative being. And with that, Kim, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our special guest for this show.
That's right, Mark. And you and I were talking about how excited we are to get the show started today with our intriguing and inspirational guest, NIURKA. I mean, her name alone catches your attention, but just wait till you hear her speak as we talk about how transforming the language that you use can transform your life. So who's ready to transform their lives today? I mean, we oftentimes hear how important our words and thoughts are, but today we're going to learn why. So NIURKA, she is a transformational leader, an author who inspires and empowers people to live purposefully and powerfully. So very important. It makes all the difference in life. NIURKA has taught tens and thousands of people to elevate the way they think, speak, and live. She also wrote the book Supreme Influence, Change Your Life with the Power of the Language That You Use. It gives readers just tools and techniques to communicate more effectively and to bring in the lives that they seek to live. So she teaches from real world experience. She's got quite a fascinating background. She was once a high school dropout who taught herself how to transform pain to possibility to potency. So she rose from selling knives door to door at the age of 15 to becoming the #1 corporate trainer for Anthony Robbins Company by 20, where she is a legend that's just held unbeatable records. So for 2 decades, NIURKA's researched and synthesized some of the most effective strategies in leadership and peak performance. And you can see some of the effectiveness in these strategies with top companies like Mercedes-Benz, Prudential, and Marriott that have all applied some of her teachings. She's a master trainer of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, otherwise known as NLP. She's a master hypnotherapist, a master practitioner of timeline therapy, and also pranic healing. So she's got quite a background. She's shared the stage with many of today's greatest thought leaders, Tony Robbins, Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson. She's also been featured in films alongside luminaries such as the Dalai Lama. My goodness, NIURKA, welcome to Inspired Living, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Kim. I'm excited to be with you.
Yeah, well, you have, as I said earlier, you've got quite an incredible background. I mean, you've dealt with some pretty major life issues at a very young age. I know that your family immigrated here from Cuba, so that must have been perhaps challenging to experience at a young age.
Well, I wasn't born yet, so I was born in Miami. They immigrated fleeing the Castro regime, and my brother was born in Los Angeles, and I was first generation here. But yeah, there were definitely some challenges, and that's what started my path early on. Is I was very frustrated with my life, and I knew inside that I was destined for more than what was showing up. So that started my quest and my search.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've also read that at the age of 15, you dropped out of high school. You ran away from home. You began selling knives. I mean, what was happening in your life at that time to make such drastic decisions?
Well, I always joke and I say that I embarked on a quest for freedom, truth, and enlightenment. But back then I called it running away from home. It was just a lot of frustration, a lot of struggle with communicating with my parents in a way where I felt understood. And at the time, my parents joined a different religion. So I found myself in this moment of asking some very deep questions of what is my purpose and who am I and what am I to do? And this launched a deep inquiry about my life's path. And that sparked the transition for me leaving my house and the new possibilities that ended up coming up into my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because, I think a lot of people that age aren't thinking that deeply. right? So that's pretty impressive. I mean, you took
I think a lot of people that are in their young ages, though, they're looking for something. They want to know who they are. They're struggling to find the essence of their true path.
So, I mean, how did you go about creating change for yourself at that young of an age?
I started reading. I started looking for mentors, and at the time I didn't have any. So I started looking for books, and I started listening to audio cassettes, and I immersed myself in knowledge. And it was through learning that new doors started opening and new conversations started happening. And as I started reading and as I started learning, my conversation started to shift. And it wasn't just my conversation with other people. It was my conversation with myself. I started asking myself different questions rather than, gosh, why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this? I started asking questions like, what can I learn from this? And what do I really want to create in my life? And what's most important to me? And as I started shifting those questions, new possibilities started coming into my life.
And NIURKA, what was the first book that you read, or who was your first mentor? I'm always curious to find what started that journey and what book you read that really continued that education for you.
Wow, there were a lot of them. I remember one of the very first books that touched me deeply was The Celestine Prophecy.
Okay.
It really tapped into an awareness that there was something more going on. And it started causing me to look beneath the mystery, if you will. In other words, what is the essence of what's creating my life and my reality? And then from there, I started studying Napoleon Hill's Laws of Success. A lot of people read Think and Grow Rich, but Think and Grow Rich is a cliff note of of his deeper course, Laws of Success.
Just hold that thought. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. Stay with us with our guest, NIURKA.
Connecting you with the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
If you've ever said, I do want it all. I do want happiness. I do want love. And I do desire the happily ever after fairy tale life, then this show is for you. Join me, Dame Nicole Brandon, for my internationally acclaimed show, Bridal Talk Radio, every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, where I'll bring you the top experts in the fields of communication, money, relationships, finance, pleasure, play, travel, sexuality, parenting, real estate, adventure, comfort, care, passion, and love.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, this is Angela Levesque, host of Entanglement Radio. Join me Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern for inspiring conversations with visionaries in spiritual science and conscious healing. Entanglement Radio, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. Transcendent talk for the conscious mind.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
And welcome back, Inspired listeners, and thank you for being with us on Inspired Living as we talk to our guest today, NIURKA. If you're interested in learning more about her and her work, you can find her at NIURKAinc.com or the supremeinfluence.com as well. We're going to be posting her contact information on social media again as well. So before we went to break, NIURKA, you were sharing with us some of the earliest books that you read and concepts that most inspired your life, that got you on the path that you're on today. The one was Celestine Prophecies. What was the other one? Because I'd like to include this in social media as well.
It was Napoleon Hill's masterpiece, Laws of Success.
Well,
the book is called Laws of Success. And then the popular one that people hear about is Think and Grow Rich. But Think and Grow Rich is actually a Cliff Note version, if you will, of Laws of Success. And I carried that book in my early teens or late teens when I was 19 approximately. I carried it with me, and it made such a big difference.
Well, yeah, because it looks like the following year you became the -- corporate trainer at the age of 20, right? For Anthony Robbins. So we need to all rush out and get this book. You started your company in 2000. What was the vision for your company?
I did. In the beginning, when I first started it, I wasn't completely sure what the vision was, although I knew the essence of it. I knew that it was about seeing every single person authentically living in their power and in their purpose and bringing their gifts into the world in a way that creates value and that creates beauty and that creates prosperity. That vision was clear. The vehicle of how specifically I was to bring that about became an evolution as I started my company.
And when you talk about living authentically and purposefully, what's the first step to doing that?
Well, the first I would say is awareness that there's only one you. I mean, Mark said that when we first started, that there's billions of people, but there is only one you. So it's coming into an appreciation and an awareness that you are unique. There has never been and there will never be anyone like you with your own unique essence and your way of expressing your gift. So from that place, I would invite people to have an inquiry, to start asking questions like, what's most important to me and what are my gifts and what am I here to bring? So from this place of awareness and elevated inquiry, then start tuning in to what is it that you're passionate about? Where does time just cease to exist for you because you're so in the flow? And then begin to tune into those areas that is your natural talent, and then begin to attract mentors. Find people that have been where you want to be, or at least in the arena, and begin to research and begin to have conversations with people that have been there. And that would be a great beginning to living in your power and in your purpose authentically.
I love it. I mean, everything, as you said, does start with awareness. Once you have that awareness, then you can create change for yourself. Now, you also are the author of a book called Supreme Influence. So what is this book about?
Well, the book tells my story, and it gives specific tools to create your life by design through the power of the language that we use. So I give specific tools, strategies, techniques to speak our dream life into existence. And supreme influence, as I define it, it's a way of being. It's a way of communicating at your highest level of excellence, where you are, your thoughts, your words, your actions, your beliefs, your values, your sense of self are in alignment. And when you're living in alignment in that way, which is in your supreme influence, you have power, real power, not power over anything, because that's not power. That's fear masked as power, or sometimes people think that's power, but it's inner power, the kind that doesn't need anything because it knows you've got it, you're it. And that's what it means to be living in supreme influence. And when you're living that way, it's you communicate in a way that empowers people. You communicate with purpose, with intention, with clarity. And it allows you to create harmonious, authentic relationships and produce successful results in all the areas of your life.
So how do we see, because like you said, so there's importance behind the language that we choose, and the lives that we've created for ourselves are oftentimes a reflection of that. So if we want to see change in our lives, so how do we change our language accordingly? That's going to help bring in that change.
Awesome question. Well, first is become very aware of what are we speaking. I always ask people to get very curious, because when we open our mouth to speak, there's infinite possibilities of what could come out. So become very curious of what are the words that are exiting our mouth. And then from there, become very present to that every word we speak or every statement we make, every question we ask contains presuppositions. And presuppositions are embedded assumptions in language that actually trigger our brain to find things that are in alignment with what we declare. So like if somebody says, gosh, why does this always happen to me? That statement or that question presupposes something that's going to cause their brain to start finding things that match that statement. I mean, years ago, I did a speaking engagement for a real estate convention, and it was 2008. It was in the middle of as the real estate markets were shifting. And one man came up to me, and the question he asked me was, how am I going to survive this market? He said, can you make sure you talk about that? Mm-hmm. And that question is going to continue to bring survival into that person's field if they keep asking it, because we live in an attraction-based universe that's going to attract into us that which is in alignment with what we're speaking into the space. So by just shifting the presuppositions in our language. So rather than, oh my gosh, how am I going to survive? It's like asking, how can I be more aware of the unlimited opportunities that surround me? Just that one shift begins to open up a new field of attraction.
Well, gosh, the way you change that around, that makes all the difference. I feel better just listening to that, right? I mean, the way you say that and shift it around is like there's relief from ourselves when we do that, right?
Because what's wrong is always available. And if you're looking for scarcity will always be available. So
that's right. That's right. Actually, it just kind of in alignment with what we're already talking about. We did have a question come in from one of our listeners who has his own business, and I know that you talk a lot on your site. You give important business tips on your site, but he is wanting to grow his business to X amount of new clients a day. So he'd like to know, what can he do to create this for himself, even if it's, just with the language alone to start with.
What can he do to attract a certain number of clients per day?
Yeah. What language can he use to come into alignment with that, or to help bring those new clients into his business simply by the thoughts that he has and the language that he uses?
Yeah, simply by the thoughts. I mean, begin to have questions with yourself about how can you understand what's most important to this client? I mean, first you want to make sure it's like this is somebody that you want to work with. Let's say you come up with this list of clients that are in alignment with the type of people that you want to bring into your business. Then it's a matter of coming into an understanding of what's most important to them. What is their vision? What's most important to them? What's most important to them in aligning with someone like you based on what you're bringing into the table? And how will they know when that person is the right match for them? So you begin to have this inquiry with yourself to really tap into their map of the world so you can understand their map of the world, understand their core values, understand what's most important to them so that you can speak into their listening effectively in a way that makes sense for them and inspire action for their reasons. And that starts with a big heart and a lot of caring and a genuine desire to know what's most important to them. And what you'll find is that as you start asking yourself these questions and then you approach them at some level, they'll sense your authenticity and sincerity and being on the same page with them, and that'll support you in attracting these clients.
Well, now you talk a little bit too about the importance of the visions that we hold in our minds as well, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
The vision that we hold in our mind is one of the keys to our creative power. I mean, the way that we think is we think in pictures, we think in words. I mean, these are all a combination of what in Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is one of the bodies of work that I teach, we call these internal representations. So internal representations are the pictures, sounds, and feelings in our mind. So let's say somebody wants to create something. They have a certain project and they have a certain goal they want to create. Well, before you can bring anything into the material world that exists in the world or in the realm of ideas. So you've got to be able to see it in your mind's eye. What is that you're inspired to create or bring into manifestation? So you've got to be able to see it, but you can't get too attached to what it looks like, because then you eliminate your ability to bring it in ways that can be even more magnificent than what you ever even expected or anticipated. So you've got to envision it clearly in the abstract, I call it, which I know can seem a little bit of a interesting way to look at it, but you're crystal clear on the essence of that which it is that you want to bring in, while still giving the universe an opportunity to bring it to you in ways that could be even better than what you imagined.
Awesome. And of course, combining that with the language that you use about whatever it is you want to create.
Actually, it is part of the language. The way that you pick the pictures in your mind are a form of language. The way that you make these pictures in your mind, the way you move your body is a form of language, your body language. And they all influence everything else. So, for example, if someone has a vision and they make it big and bright and crisp and clear and fully panoramic in color, and it's happening all around them, and that's the way they see it in their mind, that's a different way of communicating than if their goal was small, dark, dim, and far away.
Sure. My goodness. That doesn't sound so appealing, does it? I like the bright. Let's bring it. Very good. So Neuro-Linguistics Programming, NLP. Now, when you're working with people, do you work with them one-on-one or mostly in group settings? How do you work?
I work with groups, and I do work one-on-one because I bring people one-on-one on stage and do one-on-one work while everybody watches so they can see the transformation in action.
Thank you, and hold that thought. We'll be right back in 2 minutes.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
Do you want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System Show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OMTimes Radio. I'll meet you there.
Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment, a philanthropic organization. Their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Eros Evolution is where sexuality and spirituality meets. Join me, clinical sexologist Martha Tara Lee, on Eros Evolution on Thursdays, 4 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
Welcome back to Inspired Living with Mark and Kim. Today we have special guest NIURKA talking about the power of our words, our thoughts, our body language. And before we went to break, I just wanted to go back over that question real quick. We kind of rushed into break there. And the question was from an inspired listener out there. Thank you for your question. What is Neuro-Linguistic Programming, or NLP?
Wonderful question. Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Neuro stands for your neurology. Linguistic is your language. And programming is the programs that we have. So it is the science of how our language affects our nervous system. And one of the things that NLP illuminates is that you and I, we all create as we speak, that our language has that much power. The other thing that NLP looks at is it looks at the hidden determinants of human behavior. In other words, what makes people do what they do? How can you have two people in a similar environment with similar opportunities and one person creates consistent, outstanding results and the other person struggles? What's the difference? Mm-hmm. It's not so much what's happening outside, it's what's happening inside. So NLP is a science that allows us to look at how do we create our experience of reality. And one of the things that it teaches us is that we've all been programmed. And psychologists agree that by the time we're 8 years old, we've had about 25,000 hours of linguistic programming alone. So words have been downloaded into our minds, imprinting our minds with ideas about money, about God, about sex, about relationships, ideas about who we are and what is or isn't possible in our lives. And these ideas, they fuel our behavior. They drive our life until we wake up. And NLP is a technology that gives you tools and techniques to help you wake up and reprogram these old ways of thinking and being that no longer serve you. And that's the work we do in my courses, in my advanced courses. So I'd love to have you come down.
Now, the follow-up question to this, how long has NLP been around? They want to know, you talked about the science behind it. How about the history behind it?
Sure. Since 1975. And it began up in Santa Cruz. That's where it started, up in the University of Santa Cruz. There was two students. One was one student and his professor. The student was a mathematician and a computer programmer, quite a genius in his ability to recognize programs. And then he was working with his professor, who was a linguistics professor, and they began to do research. And interestingly enough, they were researching people that were experiencing psychological challenges that, from a psychological perspective, they had said, these individuals right here are very difficult to create transformation with. And these gentlemen, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, began to look and see, okay, what is it that's causing these old patterns and how can we shift them? And that's where NLP started. And what they found is they were able to produce very rapid and often instantaneous results with people that had been in therapy for many years. They could take someone who had been, let's say, dealing with a phobia for many years and had been going to therapy with no success, but yet they could sit through an NLP session and transform that phobia in 1 or 2 sessions. And what NLP illuminated was that it wasn't about what happened in our past or in our lives, because we've all had these traumas or experiences that have happened in the past, but it's how we store that information that makes a difference. So when we shift the store, we shift the reality.
Interesting. That's why I love doing this show, because I get to talk to people like you and I get to learn new and fascinating subjects and philosophies and sciences, and I will definitely check out NLP.
I would love, and one thing I'll mention real quick is when I teach NLP, I call it evolved NLP, because NLP is a very powerful tool, but just like any tool, you could take a tool, let's say you could take a hammer and you could build a school, you could build a temple, or you can build a prison. It's neutral. All the work that we do is grounded in the wisdom of love and the awareness that we're all connected. Where does the air I breathe stop and the air you breathe begin? So I call it evolved NLP, centered in the wisdom of love and that we're all connected.
And just for our inspired listeners, if you want to learn more about the work NIURKA is doing, please go out to our social media sites. I've posted her video from YouTube out there on Inspired Living Radio. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Google Plus communities. Just look for Inspired, the number 4, and us. And you talked about your book, Supreme Influence, also being on Amazon and most of the major book outlets if folks want to check out this awesome read. And what caught my eye about it is you wrote this book, because it's not every day that we wake up and want to write a book, but you said, one person awakening elevates the consciousness of the planet. I wrote this book for the one, you. I love that.
And that's how I feel, because I was that person at one point where I was searching for something and very sincere in my search. And what I know to be true is that one person's awakening has a ripple effect, and it will uplift a family, a company, a community, and ultimately our world.
Well, now earlier you'd mentioned something really interesting, that by the age of 8, we've had all this programming already take place. So what if, if the quality of your life mirrors your mental and emotional states? If someone feels stuck or stressed, what would be the fastest way to shift their state from a disempowering to an empowering state?
That's an awesome question. I'll give you a fastest way to do it, and then we'll illuminate how to create the transformation at the root cause level. So it's not just something that we have to shift in the moment.
Okay, I'm getting excited.
Yeah, but let's go to the root of it. So
a root cause analysis. I love it.
So in the moment, if someone feels stressed or if they're in a funk, the fastest way is, one, to shift your physiology, like shift your body language, because motion creates emotion, and how you move influences how you feel. And you'll notice that when someone's stressed, there's a very specific physiology that goes along with it. Their shoulders are in a certain place. Their eyes are usually looking in a certain place. They might be down versus up. The moment you start looking up, you start accessing more of your vision rather than your feeling or your kinesthetic that you access when you look down. So the first thing would be move your body. Put your shoulders back, inhale a deep breath, elongate your spine, open up your heart center, look up. And immediately that'll shift how you feel. And then from there, you can ask a more empowering question, like, what am I inspired to create? Or what can I learn from this? Or what am I grateful for? Or who do I know that could support me with this? So those two techniques will help you in the moment to shift a state. But if that state keeps coming up, if somebody can push your buttons, or if something can happen and that comes up, I always say, when you squeeze an orange, what do you get? You get what's inside. You get orange juice. And it's the same thing with you. It's like, if you're squeezed by the pressures of life, what's coming out of you is what's inside. If it's a reoccurring thing, I would invite you to get curious about it. And in the curiosity, there's an opening, because a lot of times people have resistance instead of curiosity, and that keeps the energy blocked. So have some curiosity, which creates an opening, and then source back that emotion. Let's say if it's an emotion of, if you're feeling stress or if you're feeling sadness, source that back to the very first time you've felt that state or that emotion. Because what will happen is there's going to be a gift in that. There's going to be something buried within that, some type of learning or insight. And once you gather the learning and you gather the insight at the root cause level, it allows that old pattern to dissolve in the presence of new understanding. So old patterns keep showing up until we learn something. And that's the power of a course I do twice a year in Sedona. It's called Neogenesis, and Neo means new and Genesis means beginning, and it's about a new beginning. And one of the things that I reveal in that course is that often the area that has challenged you the most is where the greatest opportunity is for your evolution. And it's in these places, like you said, Kim, where someone feels stuck or they feel stressed or whatever that may be. There's a gift in that.
So would that be in line with the timeline therapy that you teach a lot of too? Is helping you get back to that root cause? Is that what timeline therapy is? I love the timeline work, and I bring in the timeline work with NLP and with hypnosis and with a number of different technologies to go back to the root. What was that very first event? That very first experience where you felt hurt or sad or scared? Because those experiences get buried, and often they're completely outside of conscious awareness, and buried within it are insights. Okay, because I was going to say, so once you come into that awareness, so what do you do with that information? So you understand, okay, this is why I'm feeling like that. Then what do you do from there?
Well, what happens is it's not just an intellectual conscious thing. It's you go back to the experience and you go, okay, well, this is where it's coming from. What can I learn from this? What is the learning here? And that's the key. That's where the magic happens. Because when you gather a learning, you see or code the experience from a different perspective. It's like rather than seeing it from that limited point of view, you see it from your enlightened eyes, or you see it from an expanded context. And as you see it from an expanded context, from an enlightened perspective, it's like seeing it from the eyes of your higher self. That old story pops, the old story. And what is the old story? It's different for different people, but an example is, I'm not good enough, or I'm not this enough, or I'm not that enough.
That makes so much sense. Yeah, because perspective is everything. But in order to shift your perspective, you need awareness, certain level of awareness to be able to do that. Right.
And what happens is that and here's the thing is, I find it's essential to be guided in this process, because these old imprints, if you will, are stored at the subconscious level. And if you're consciously trying to guide yourself to a place that's been stored very, very deep, it may be challenging. So to work with somebody who's been down that path and can support you with that would be very beneficial, because what happens is when the transformation happens, your entire timeline, since we're talking about the timeline, can recontextualize itself in light of these new learnings that you got, in light of this healing of releasing these old emotions or old patterns.
So when you say work with somebody, of course you have great workshops and weekend classes that you do. Who might they seek out? You're talking about like on a one-on-one basis, they might be able to work with somebody?
Well, if they feel inspired to work with me, I'd love to have them come and be a part of our courses in Sedona, or the ones we do in California. But if not, yes, find somebody who's got skill in being able to guide this type of transformation. And many of those people, if someone wants to work one-on-one, are graduate students that have been through our courses and have been through our master's courses. And they're specifically trained in being able to guide this type of work.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, NIURKA. This has just been inspirational. So much great information. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids.
Welcome to The Gathering Around My Kitchen Table on Equilarium FM, Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join my guests as we integrate spirituality into everyday reality with vibrant conversations, inspired interviews, and my latest channeled guidance to inspire and brighten your day. I'm Claire Johnson, and together we'll be raising vibrations across the nations.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network. Simone Milasas would like you to know that business can be fun, which is why she wrote the book, Joy of Business. What if you could have the joy of business rather than the stress and struggle? Most of the time, the only thing stopping you from a thriving business is you. In the Joy of Business book, Simone gives you access consciousness tools and pragmatic ways to get out of your own way and to create the business, life, and living you know is possible and beyond what this reality says is achievable. Business is joy. It's creation. It's generative. It can be the adventure of living. You can purchase your copy of the book through Amazon or Joy of Business website, www.accessjoyofbusiness.com.
September 23rd, September 23rd, September 23rd. Mark that down on your calendar. Put it in your phone. Whatever you do, circle that date. 9 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio. Yes, it is the return of the Joe Show. We will come back live with season 9. Wow, 9 seasons. I can only think of 4. Winter, spring, summer, fall. Salt, pepper, oregano, and thyme. No. Anyways, we don't have that much time. We're going to be back live September 23rd. Don't forget, 9 p.m. Eastern, here on OMTimes Radio.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
And welcome back to Inspired Living with Mark and Kim. Fascinating subject today, talking with NIURKA about our thoughts and our words and how to change our life. I have a personal question for you. I'm curious to know what your name actually means. It's a very unique name, and I had to ask you before we went on the air how to actually say your name correctly, and I'm curious what the meaning behind the name is.
It is a term of endearment in Russian. It translates to Anna as like just a term of endearment, and it also translates into mink. Okay. I don't have a big story like it translates into guiding light, but a mink is that which can go into the dark places and still be able to come out towards the light.
Beautiful. And then the other question I had for you, I think it would be important for our inspired listeners to know, in your experiences, and you've been doing this work for many years now, what really stands out in your mind as maybe an example that you could share with us on how you've transformed a life, maybe an experience that you had yourself that you'd like to share today that really put you on this path? Because you just don't wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a keynote speaker traveling the world talking about NLP and all these different subjects, right? So I'm just curious to know if there was an experience or a situation that really changed you, or something that you did and changed somebody else's life.
Oh my goodness. I have so many stories of that from all the students that I've seen have breakthroughs and transformations. Mm-hmm. I'll share, for me, it was a moment of decision where I just knew that something had to change and I had to change it. And in the presence of that, it was from hitting what felt like a rock bottom. Okay. And what happens sometimes is when you're in that place where you're down on your knees, if you will, either literally or metaphorically, you look in places you would have otherwise not looked. So I think that was the beginning for me in the early stages of my life. And the other thing would be to begin to put yourself in environments that call forth more from within you than you even know that you have. I think that was a big part for me. I mean, I was at 19 years old traveling with Tony Robbins. I lived in 16 different cities over a 5-year period and became the top trainer, breaking all the records within that company. And how was it that I was able to produce that? I didn't have that experience beforehand. I did not have that experience. So what it was I put myself in environments that demanded that level of excellence and results from me. Mm-hmm. And that caused me to find it within myself. And that's the power of the courses that we do, is we create this cocoon, if you will, that as people leave their usual environment and their usual life and they come into this immersion experience, that immersion creates the space for deep, powerful breakthroughs that stick.
Oh, I love that.
And for our listeners who are interested in learning more about NIURKA's workshops and all that she's doing, you'd like to work with her, make sure that you visit her site, NIURKAinc.com. Again, we'll have that on Facebook as well, but it lists all of her upcoming events. So, NIURKA,
Kim, say that if they just want to get started, a great way is go to supremeinfluence.com, because that's a one-day event that we have that's been on tour across the country, and they can come and be with us for a day, and that'll give them a great insight into the power of the work.
Awesome.
And you said that was down in Sedona as well? Or where is that located?
Well, Sedona is our course. Those are
Sedona's a course, okay.
Version course that we do twice a year. That's Neogenesis. We have a different course we do in the desert, but like a phenomenal first step to really become aware of how this work can make a big difference in someone's life is come to the one-day event. We have one coming up in Chicago, and we have one coming up in New York, and we're about to have our calendar for 2016 announced, and that's supremeinfluence.com. But if someone's ready, they're listening to this and they're like, I want to go deep, then Sedona would be definitely the place.
Well, and if you want to put Washington State on, specifically Seattle around that 2016 calendar, that would have my vote.
You know what? I am definitely going to put Seattle on there because I've got a big piece of my heart up in the Northwest. So I would love to do that. And actually, anybody who's listening, if you want us to come to your city, go on our social media and let us know. And we'll definitely take that into consideration as we finalize our calendar for next year.
So, NIURKA, what if I've got some more questions that I want to just get as much as we can in the next couple of minutes here for our listeners and for me too. What if somebody, so many of us are plagued with negative thoughts or negative self-talk? I mean, what's the most effective way to transform our thinking?
Ooh. Well, I have a lot of strategies for that. One, I would say be present to who you hang out with and what you feed your mind. So be present to the community. Who are the people that you are spending your time with? Because the quality of our conversations shapes the quality of our life. What type of conversations are you engaging with others? And then what are you reading? What are you listening to? Obviously, you're here listening to this, so that's awesome. But what are you feeding your mind? Because that's going to be, we know from the science of epigenetics that as we put cells in a different environment, they respond differently. So, what are you putting into your body? Where are you, what type of conversations are you frequenting?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could definitely see the importance of that. I mean, I think we've all experienced having conversations with somebody that is just not so uplifting, and how that affects us when we are in situations like that. I could definitely see that.
Yeah, and become the observer. See, as someone catches themselves in a negative comment or in a negative rant, the moment you catch yourself, you're not in the negativity anymore. Now you're aware. Mm-hmm. So just practicing awareness. It's like not even trying to stop yourself from doing something, but just becoming aware and expanding the awareness and becoming very present to that. That begins to dissolve old patterns.
So what would you say, too, might be the one thing that a listener can focus on right now in this very moment that would immediately improve the quality of their life?
Gratitude.
Gratitude, love it.
There's, because gratitude presupposes abundance, and it raises your vibration, and it causes that which is in alignment with that abundance to come into your life. It's the difference between focusing on what am I getting versus what do I appreciate and how can I give. Mm-hmm. So I would say those are actually two things. One is gratitude, and then two is focusing on giving rather than getting, which is a very powerful place to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So now with all of this great work that you're doing out there, you talk about the workshops that you're doing, but then you can also, students literally can get certified in the work that you're doing. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. We do certification in Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and we do it at the practitioner level and also at the master practitioner level. This is especially, this is powerful for anybody because it's going to support them in elevating their ability to effectively communicate, but especially if you work with others. Especially if you're in a coaching capacity, in a leadership, in a management, in a team building capacity, it'll be something that will give you strategies, techniques, and resources to rise to the next level.
Awesome. So we have just a couple more minutes left. I just want to, again, encourage our listeners to check NIURKA out at both of her websites, which is NIURKAinc.com and SupremeInfluence.com, where it's got all of this great information and really helpful tips and stuff too. You post a lot of things in your blog that people can read up on and learn from as well. So as we near the end of our show, I just want to make sure I give the proper thank you and appreciation and gratitude to you for being with us today.
Yes, thank you, NIURKA. It's been a pleasure talking with you and getting to know more about what you do and just the changes and the work that you're doing to change this world. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been so wonderful to be with the both of you and with all of the listeners. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and what I love most too is that we've left our listeners today with techniques and tools that they can use from this point forward to help create shifts in their own lives. So that's always an empowering thing to do, and we thank you for that. Next week, we are we have another special guest on, Barbara Schiffman. She's an author, a teacher, a speaker. She focuses on the Akashic records. So we're going to be talking in more detail about what the Akashic records are, how you can work with the records, the knowledge and wisdom that are contained in the records. And so if you've got questions right now, you can also send those through as we gather in preparation for next week's show as well. And Mark, do you have any upcoming events that you'd like to talk about or anything?
Well, no upcoming events. I'm actually moving to Seattle, so that's a big enough event for me right now. After 15 years, we're moving the household and the spiritual practice down into Seattle, so looking forward to that. How about you?
Awesome. Same here. I'm just getting geared up for my upcoming mediumship class in Boston. Woohoo!
Sweet.
And wishing everybody a beautiful week. Thank you for being with us on Inspired Living.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody. Be kind, be caring, be compassionate. We'll see you next week.